everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you might be joining us from in the world today. My name is Meg Alexander, and I could not be more excited to get to host another Power to Fly Chat and Learn event. Now, before we dive in and introduce you to today's speaker, I wanted to let you know that they are here today on behalf of Aurora Solar. Now, Aurora Solar is a fast-growing Series D company, and they are disrupting the clean energy industry and changing the course of history with their award-winning industry-leading software. Now, their software doesn't just design millions of solar products, but it designs a better tomorrow, empowering solar companies to sell, design, and install residential and commercial solar arrays accurately, seamlessly, and at scale. Now, if anything that we say today kind of sparks your interest on Aurora Solar, I really encourage you to check out their company page on powertofly.com. You can see the link on the page in front of you, or we'll be sharing it in the chat thread as well. All right, now, very excited to introduce you to our guest from Aurora Solar. We're going to be talking to Jacob, who's one of their senior recruiters. Now, Jacob boasts a rich background in talent acquisition spanning over 4 years. His journey from Middle Tennessee State University to his current role demonstrates a blend of experience and expertise in driving recruitment efforts across North and South America. Now, Jacob is passionate about fostering inclusive workplaces, and his commitment to sourcing top talent aligns seamlessly with Aurora Solar's mission of accelerating the clean energy transition. Jacob, welcome to the stage. We're so happy to have you join us today. Is there anything you'd like our audience members to know about you before we get started on questions?
No, I think you did a great job. Thank you, Meg, and thank you for having me.
Awesome. All right. Now we're going to be going through questions that we had presented to Jacob, but if you've got follow-ups, please feel free to share those with us. We would love to see them. All right. So to get us started, could you tell us a little bit about what motivated you to join Aurora Solar and what your experience has been like working for them as a recruiter?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think my journey to Aurora is somewhat untraditional. I initially joined as a contract recruiter, and this was in the summer of 2020. Honestly, I was primarily drawn to the mission, and this was also the summer of 2020. COVID was really at the forefront of everybody's mind, and it felt like a good time to work on something meaningful and mission oriented. And it also Aurora had just recently begun supporting a fully remote work culture, which was a big factor at that point in time. So I did that on a kind of a contract basis for about 2 years. And then I guess just kind of fell in love with the team and the people and decided to join full time. So I came for the mission 2 years ago or 4 years ago. And then 2 years into that, I decided to stay and hang around just because of the people.
I love that. Was your experience working within the teams any different from, being a contract worker to then moving into the full-time space?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I was a little worried about that just because, you never know. I think having done the contract aspect, I certainly had more insight than somebody else would have. But really and truly, my days didn't change much at all. It became a little bit easier to talk about the company. I felt at that point more a part of it than I had. And granted, it'd been 2 years. I felt like that already, but it just became a little bit easier and more seamless. So I think for the most part, it was a pretty smooth transition. I couldn't have imagined it going any easier.
Nice, great to hear that.
Yeah.
All right, so from your perspective, do you think that there are any qualities or traits that successful candidates at Aurora Solar typically possess?
Hmm. Yeah. So I think, on the one hand, I'm a little bit biased here, but I think genuinely we do hire some of the best people out there. And as your sort of the intro slide said, I think it had a capture of our company values. And for us, team outside of the technical skills or the functional skills, if someone's an accountant, right, they kind of have a specialized skill set compared to somebody that's an engineer, for example. But I think something that sort of transcends all of that is our team orientation and collaborative tendency. To me, those are the biggest things that sort of bypass all the jobs themselves and what make Aurorans unique. One of our company values is we're in this together. And we truly do believe that we only achieve our mission and our goal by working as one team. And certainly, we're a fast moving startup. There's a lot of transitions that have to come with that and adaptability, but we do accomplish everything from a team first perspective. So I think that would be the main skill set that I would say is common amongst every part of Aurora.
It's really good to hear that, because I before working for Power to Fly, I had kind of similar experiences at a lot of different companies where it was fine, it wasn't a great fit, I didn't any port in a storm, right?
Right.
But I think my attitude towards work really changed once I came to Power to Fly, because it's really easy in a company to get kind of siloed, right? Either
Mm,
within your departments or your office space or within teams. And I think that good companies really do make it about the team. And it's not necessarily like the team versus everyone else, but it's this idea of
sure.
like, we don't get there by stepping on our people along the way. We get there
Mhm.
by continuously building everyone up. So I think
Exactly.
that's wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah.
very cool. All right. I want to talk a little bit about maintaining a healthy work-life balance. This is not easy and it can get, really difficult depending on what industry you're from or what time of year it is. How does Aurora Solar really support you to maintain a healthy work-life balance, especially when there are so many demanding roles within the org?
Yeah, it's not easy. It's like I said, we are a startup, so it's fast paced, things do change, and there's sort of you have to be adaptable. And I think everybody's wired a little bit differently with work-life balance. So that there's certainly that. But I think Aurora generally there's a number of things that we do to help support and promote that balance. First and foremost is our time off policy. We call it uncapped and flexible. I know it's pretty buzzy in the startup world to say unlimited PTO. And I think everybody knows that nothing's truly unlimited. It probably would get capped off if you requested a 200 days off a year, right? That's an extreme example, but ours is just that there's not a set number of days that you can take. We do have minimums that people have to take just so that they are refreshing and recharging themselves. And similarly, amongst company holidays, we also and sick days, right? We also do mental health days, which are a little bit different from PTO in that they're not planned in advance. They're kind of I don't want to say spur of the moment, but they're it's dictated when when you need that time, it's there for you, and that doesn't matter if you figure that out a month prior or the morning of. Um, and then company wide, we also do this thing called Energize Fridays. Um, they started off as just summer Fridays because we did it when the weather was nice. But a couple months out of the year, we have just kind of a collective company day off on a Friday. And we do this, for a couple of reasons. One, it gives just everybody, well earned time off, time to reset and truly recharge or re-energize. And we like to do that on kind of a set day, so that it is company wide. Maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but if I take PTO, I don't know, whenever, sometimes you can get that fear of missing out, of that FOMO of like, oh, well, I'm not at this team meeting. What if something happens, or do I need to check my email or Slack? And Energized Fridays kind of eliminate that guilt, at least for me. It's like everybody's off, nobody's expected to work. You don't feel like you're missing out on something because everybody's recharging. And I personally think there's real value to doing that together.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, Power to Fly is an international company, and so it's very easy to kind of fall into the realization that kind of somebody's always up and working, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
And it is a completely different feeling when you're like, oh wait, I'm on PTO and I'm not going to come back to a bunch of emails because everybody else is supposed to
Right.
not be working today too. It really
Mhm.
is. It's a completely different feeling. And you make a good point, about the unlimited PTO. I get more excited when I hear about people that have mandatory minimums of
Mhm.
PTO,
Mhm.
because you're right, like unlimited it's a nebulous thing. Yes, it means unlimited, but it doesn't actually mean unlimited.
Sure. Yeah.
Kind of like endless soup, salad, and breadsticks. They will eventually kick you out of that Olive Garden.
Eventually,
So
unfortunately.
yeah. So I like that it's something that is not just encouraged, but it's something that is modeled as well. That
Mhm.
is, that's really big.
Mhm.
Have there been any times where you've taken, like a mental health day that was, especially helpful for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that there definitely has been. They're not Yeah, I wouldn't say too often, just because I don't know. It's I'm I'm that person that's always checking Slack on my phone, so it is genuinely hard for me to unplug. And that's something I'm working on. But yeah, especially I think it sounds silly this time of year, but when the weather's really nice, sometimes when I was in school, my parents gave me permission like once a year. If you felt like it, you could have a Ferris Bueller day where it was just like a nice day. You just didn't have to go to school. And transitioning into the adult world and having to work, you take that for granted. You don't always have that
Oh,
flexibility. So I think, especially now that it's spring and everything just feels a little bit, I don't want to sound cliche, but rejuvenating. It's nice to be able to have that in your back pocket of like, okay, it's a nice day. It's, something's going on. I'm just gonna, have a me day.
yeah, absolutely. Well, it
Yeah.
also kind of goes to like being treated like an adult, right? I feel like
Right.
a lot of us moved from school situations into work situations, and depending on how long ago you entered the workforce, there really wasn't a lot of things like this, right? There was not a
Absolutely.
lot of mental health days. Especially when you're first getting started out of school, it's really easy to feel like you kind of don't get any of those things.
Mhm.
So I think that's really awesome that it's treated a lot more like we treat you like adults. You know what you need. You know when your work needs to get done, that kind of thing. I think that's
100%. Yeah. It's a trust thing, I think.
yeah, of course. Also makes me wonder how long Ferris Bueller's going to be a decent reference because like I'm right there with you, but
Oh man, I know.
I feel like my younger sisters would be like, "Wait, wasn't that movie that you made us watch once?" Like, so
As soon as I said it, I thought, oh, that's gonna date me.
it needs to live on though. So
It
if
should,
you're
yeah.
watching this and you don't know who Ferris Bueller is, go out, stream it right now. It's fabulous. It's a piece of my childhood for sure.
Absolutely.
All right. So obviously in a, in an environment like Aurora Solar, there's a lot going on. You guys
Mhm.
have a lot of projects. Everything's very fast paced. I'm no stranger to it being at a startup as well.
Mhm.
Do you have any tips or strategies that you utilize when you're trying to manage your workload and prioritize tasks? Is there
Yeah.
any rule of thumb that you go by?
Yeah, so I think they're sort of twofold. One's a little bit more like overarching, maybe a little bit more obvious. The other probably is also obvious, but I think it's like day to day, it's the most helpful for me. So the first, I'll just kind of start there and work down. Um, constant communication, I think, with like your manager is always going to be the key there. So at Aurora, company wide, we use an OKR framework to kind of outline our objectives and sort of like where everything's moving. And every Monday we do a company all hands, and probably every other Monday, if not every Monday, you hear OKRs and sort of where the update is. So that kind of helps orient you as far as what where we're headed. So like that kind of guides the work. And then team or department wise, we have our own sort of departmental OKRs that then feed into the company's overarching ones. So I think for me, that's sort of how I, try to budget my time or break things down. And then just more granular, or yeah, a little bit more granular day to day. This part probably looks different for everybody. I'm a big believer in abiding by working hours. So like especially being a remote first company, like you'd said, if you're international, somebody's always working when you're not there. It's inevitable. So in our calendars, we have the ability to define our working hours each day. And so I do that, and then that syncs with your company Slack. And so when you do that, at least the way we have it configured, when Meg, if you're about to shoot me a Slack message at 6 p.m. my time, you'll get a little notification of like the moon next to my name. It's tells you basically that I'm offline and probably won't respond to you until tomorrow. And I think that sort of just that clarity really helps me, at least like when I'm done for the day, I feel like I can be done. And there's not the expectation that I'm going to respond to something, because people know I'm on the East Coast. I'm 3 hours ahead of the people on the West. So yeah, it kind of works itself out that way.
I like that. And I think it's especially important if you are a remote first company. Um, you know, American culture at least is not necessarily geared towards what are your boundaries so we can respect
Sure.
those, right?
Mhm.
A lot of our working culture is about being extra available, making sure
Mhm.
that you are available at a moment's notice and no matter what. And I think it is really important that we talk about it kind of both from an employer perspective as well as the employee, right? Because you have to know what your boundaries are like in order to even set them.
Mhm.
And so, it means a lot that these boundaries are encouraged by the by the company, because it does make for better performance. If you don't have people stressed out and available constantly, then you do have people that can rest when they need to rest and then bring their full selves to work.
Absolutely.
Which, yeah, massive.
Yeah, I think when I going back to one of the earlier questions, when I first started, I was a contractor, and I think it was more than anything, I think it was my just sort of impression of like, I'm a contractor, these are my responsibilities, this is what I like have to be. But I remember there was a time where we'd like earlier in the day, we were, on the recruiting side, obviously it's all about like hiring. So we'd like started an offer process for a candidate. I probably got it started at 1 o'clock my time, and it has to go through several layers of approval, and they slowly did that way throughout the day. And I think the final approval came in at like 8 o'clock, and it was 5 o'clock for the person that had approved it on the West Coast. And so I had long since signed off for the day and was eating dinner, doing something, and I got a notification on my phone from Slack that it had been approved, and I thought, oh shoot, okay, well, I've got to hop on this, and so I did it, and all went well. It was great, and then the next day, I was talking to my manager at the time, and kind of relaying that, and he was like, Jacob, why did it was what, 8:30, 8:45? Why did you do that? And I was like, well, the person there, I think they were actually in Hawaii, so it was, I don't remember what time it was for them, but it was definitely a different kind of time. And they were like, well, we appreciate the dedication and all, but like, don't do that again.
Yeah.
Stay off. And that was like a really impactful moment. Maybe it's just me, but it was like, oh, okay, this is okay. I don't need to do this all the time. Maybe, sure, there are times where like something is really time sensitive and critical and you have to be a bit flexible, but that's not the expectation, right? That's the outlier. That was impactful to hear.
Well, of course it was. I mean, it's one thing to hear this being said, right? Respect your own time. Make sure that you are, taking time for yourself, blah, blah, blah. It's one thing to be told all of that. It's quite another to see it modeled. And then it is even another entirely different thing to be like specifically told, like, hey, this was great. You don't have to do that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there's a lot of us that really grew up being kind of, immersed in this idea of you're going to have to like throw everything you have at your job, especially till you get a certain, like to a certain echelon, right?
Right.
And so, especially in uncertain social and financial times, it is really easy to just keep kind of doubling down on work because that's the thing that's going to keep providing for you. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, of course that it was impactful. I mean, how could it not be to be like told, like, yes, we see what you're trying to do. The attitude is great, but respect yourself and respect your
Yeah.
time.
Mhm.
Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. So if we've got people who are interested in joining the Aurora Solar team and they want to know what that journey might look like for them, a couple years down the road, could you tell us a little bit about the opportunities for professional development and career growth that exist for employees at Aurora Solar? Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I'm going to do it too. It's such a great question. I think, this is such like an important thing that sometimes maybe it can get overlooked when like you're job hunting and you can hear these things, but until you've experienced it, you don't quite know like what this means or what like was a good model of this. So, very important. I'm glad we get to talk about it. I think, for us, we have a number of different like support mechanisms in place here. So like first off, I think everybody just across the company is genuinely so friendly and eager to help. We have various like Slack channels for like functional mentorship in different areas or different skill sets, whether it's like a book club about this topic or just kind of lunch and learn mentor time with whoever wants to be available. We also last summer we rolled out our first job shadowing program, that allowed team members in one area or one function to I'll call it like light internship with other areas for like 2 to 4 weeks to get sort of insight on day to day of that side of the company. So I think um, to me, those are the biggest things I think that we've done that have benefited me personally, as well as several other people in the company that I know of.
That is wonderful. So as they're as people are participating in these light internships, is it with the idea of potentially like pivoting into a different role or moving to a different team? Or is this more along the lines of kind of gaining a global experience of the business to have a better idea of where they currently sit?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's both, and I think it depends on the person, right? So like for me, it was very much that latter, or excuse me, the former of I want to explore this specific area. I'm interested in transitioning to this, so let's get exposure, actually see what that's like, and learn sort of what that side of the org, how they operate and who's involved. And for other people, it's very much that of like, okay, so how does my role fit into this broader picture of the organization? Kind of as we said earlier, it's really easy to get siloed into your team, your role, your niche. And I think it's a helpful, even if it's something you're maybe not even that interested in. I think it's just helpful to do every so often, just to like orient yourself and kind of see, oh, okay, this is how this part of the organization like collaborates with my director or whatever, like just things you don't necessarily and again, maybe I'm just speaking for myself, things I didn't necessarily appreciate, or I guess I kind of took for granted until I saw sort of the broader inner workings of it. So I think both, it can be served both ways.
I think that's really important. And, like you said, this is stuff that may or may not kind of come to your attention over the course of just your regular work time. And I think that especially getting better understanding of how different parts of the business work in concert with each other, that's
Yeah,
invaluable, honestly. Like anytime
absolutely.
I've ever had a company that was like, hey, you're going to follow the life cycle of, like, I worked in window manufacturing for a while, and that was something that you did. Even
Sure.
if all you were going to do was work on the production floor, they
Mhm.
still wanted you to understand how the different parts of this all kind of came
Yeah.
together. And I liked that it was more of a conscious, like, here's how this all goes. Not just from, being new in a manufacturing capacity, but
Sure.
also like because it's very easy to get so focused in on what you're doing and how to do it well
Mhm.
that you might have no idea how your work is actually affecting, interacting, helping, other people in the
Yeah.
business. I like
Mhm.
that a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So we talked a little bit about career pivoting. And Aurora Solar is in, they exist in an industry that was not nearly as big as it is now,
Sure.
even, 5, 10, 15 years ago. So do you think that there are any examples of people who've made successful career pivots into Aurora Solar that came from an industry outside of renewable energy?
Yeah. So funny enough, I actually think I would say most of Aurorans, but the people that are here have come from industries that weren't, green tech or renewable. I think we're in a really fortunate space where we have a lot of diverse skills and sets of backgrounds that really benefit just the overall team and sort of company culture. We're, being in the solar space, like we are a solar software company, which on its surface kind of sounds, 10 years ago, somebody would say like, what does that even, what does that mean? That doesn't exist. And that allows us to really be like at this interesting place where some Aurorans, I guess we're in the solar space and they found their way to software because of us. And then most Aurorans, I would say, on the other side, were in the other side of it, where they had been in software. Maybe it was, anything from education tech, health tech, or accounting tech, whatever, and
Yeah.
they found a way to solar, to renewables through us. So it's this really great convergence of both skills. And there's not a right or wrong. I think you need all of those backgrounds, and we, I think, have always done a great job of not just hiring the same type of people. We really like to bring in a vast, or excuse me, a broad uh no, sorry. Is this something we could edit? I feel like I gotta.
Yeah. No, no,
Okay.
I got you. I get you. Yeah. You're talking about like kind of how you're pulling from a wide array of
Yeah.
people.
of
And
different
I think,
backgrounds and perspectives that
yeah,
makes the, the overall company better because it's not just like trying to be one thing. Yeah.
yeah. No, I mean, that makes a ton of sense actually, because I mean, solar energy and renewable energy is it's the future, and it's something that's going to impact literally every single one of us. And so, especially when you have a product or a service that is designed to help so many people, you really do have to make sure that your teams, to the extent you're able to, reflect your customer base, right? Like you have to make sure that you're kind of filling culture gaps that you might not even know you have,
Mhm.
to kind of continuously ensure that you have people and minds that can help you meet these challenges.
Exactly. I think that's, it's an interesting way of looking at it, and something that, and this might just be the recruiting side of me that gets really nerdy about these things, but I feel like so many places that you interview or you talk to people about like interviewing, you know, the hiring team will say culture fit. And it's kind of nebulous, like what exactly like does that mean? And is that a good thing all the time? I think something we do in our process, um, we try to avoid that, and we look for culture complements. We think about like, okay, what are the skills or the functionality type things that are going to, mesh and work with the kind of the attitudes and approaches that we as a company take. But like, it's not just a kind of a copy and paste thing. We need new ideas and new perspectives to push us forward. Like you said, if you're building a company for everybody or building a product for everybody, you need to hire from everybody. It's not just a one size fits all.
Yeah, of course. And I love what you said there about, hiring teams, or teams that say like, oh, we need to add people. Obviously, they want people that are going to mesh well, right?
Of
And I,
course.
I like how you drew that distinction between like culture fit, which, like you said, like that can lead very quickly into a very homogenous workplace, right?
Mhm.
Because you're trying to get people that'll fit along with who's already there. But I love this idea of looking at it as culture gaps, as
Mhm.
well as looking at it as like, you're not trying to find somebody that fits the culture. You're trying to fit somebody that will mesh within, right? So,
Right.
what we're really talking about instead of culture is more like attitude. Like, you're trying to make sure that somebody's going to bring, an attitude of continuous curiosity, basic respect for other people, and, probably an open mindedness to make sure that change is not a thing that's going to
Absolutely.
scare you, because you're at the
Sure.
forefront of an industry that is going to keep changing.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, like, I think that's really important, right? Because when we talk about this, it's like, well, what's the culture like? Who succeeds there? And it can really easily sound like you're kind of moving towards one smaller and smaller
Mhm.
point, as opposed to no, 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 no. We're casting a very wide net to make sure that we are opening ourselves up to as many, new voices and new opinions and new perspectives that we have yet to hear from. I think that's great.
Mhm. Absolutely.
All right. So if we have, if there are people who are looking into Aurora Solar and want to, kind of make a transition, what does that look like for employees who are looking to kind of explore new roles within the company?
Hmm. Yeah, so I know we talked earlier about the sort of the job shadowing program, and I think that's probably the thing I would point to the most here, as well as the I think I think I also mentioned the like mentorship channels and sort of like the Slack interest groups, that's all there as well, and I would definitely say that holds true here. Something else we do, there was a big push probably 2 years ago, as we started to grow, was we realized department wide, we really needed to establish a very clear career ladder and career progression for each role or each sort of functional area. And now that's at the point where that's something that's, talked about and analyzed when we like hire a new role that we haven't hired before, is okay, how does that sort of, do we insert that into what already exists in this area, or is this like a new branch on this tree? And so all of that exists like in our I'll call it our company wiki, or Wikipedia, but kind of our internal system of these are sort of the requirements for this. This is what like career progression looks like, and these are sort of the deliverables or the demonstratables. And we like most companies, we do a pretty standard sort of like performance review cycle every 6 months. But our managers, when we start having those conversations, it's about, I think, okay, this is what you're working towards. How can we find opportunities so that you can demonstrate these things? It's very collaborative in that sense. Again, kind of going back to our, we're in this together. Of course, this is, career progression can sometimes be like, I feel like it can feel more individualistic, and it definitely is to an extent, but we like to think that I think partner with our team members and, you know, push for those opportunities where they need to happen if it's not going to happen, organically or naturally.
I like that. I like that it's a collaborative effort, and it's not just, the onus isn't just on the employee to say like, hey, here's what I want to do. Can we make this happen? But it's also something that, that the business it cares about and makes the space for. Because I think that's really important, especially when, it's becoming more and more common for people to change jobs every like 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, that's a huge expense for a business, right? You're offloading people, you have to then bring more on. But if you are able to harness the talent you have and make sure that they are able to develop, this is also kind of goes to what we talk about, progression and like career advancement. It's
Mhm.
not always linear. You're
Right.
not just climbing one ladder and everybody's, trying to get to the same management role and then, a C-level
Mhm.
beyond that. Success and climbing the ladder and career progression can look different for everyone.
Absolutely.
Um, so yeah, I like that it's, obviously the onus, like the start has to be on the employee, right? You have to decide what you want to do, if you want to pursue something else, whatever. But it's really impactful when it's met with that level of like constructive excitement from the company
Yeah,
as well. That's great.
absolutely.
Yeah. All right. One of the questions that we get asked a lot, no surprise there, because Powerfly is squarely in the interests of DEIB, which is diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Um, can you tell us some of the specific ways that Aurora Solar encourages those values within the team, and you really support creating and maintaining a diverse work culture?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, on one hand, again, I'm kind of viewing this two, maybe three ways that there are two to three lenses here. I think organizationally, we recognize the need to grow as not just like the term diverse can get, thrown in, and it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So I think, we look at it as like, a broad set of, experiences and opinions, and we want to hire from underrepresented groups, when possible, whatever that means to that industry or that niche. So, on the one hand, we have a functional team and area at our company for DEIB. The thing I mentioned earlier about culture complement, that's actually something that our director of DIB, Shalisha, had mentioned, and it really stood out to me, and that's something she's kind of been pushing and trying to help implement and establish across different departments. So the fact that we have that team and the amazing work that she's doing, I think, goes a long way. And then secondly, just as a company, we have, or again, on kind of like the more employee side, we have various like ERGs and different employee driven groups that, um, you know, provide a wide range of perspectives, and, whether that may be like listen hours or lunch and learns, or just, random, just general awareness events. I think they go a long way to spreading knowledge and spreading awareness about whatever the cause or the thought might be, but also giving space for members of that community or that demographic to share their voice and to feel, a community. And I think all of that goes a long way.
Yeah, of course. I mean, especially when, if you have a company that is as diversity focused, you want to make sure that you are meeting people where they are, right? And we are all multifaceted, intersectional individuals. And it also kind of goes to what we talk about a lot when it comes to company culture, right? Company
Yeah.
culture is a lot like a garden. And if you want a field full of wildflowers, there are specific things that you do not have to do. You can go
Mm,
hands off. You can just say, like, all right, let the natural pollinators go. We won't, buzz down all the grass to 2 inches. Like, we'll do what we can to encourage this, right? And there's nothing wrong with having a wildflower company culture at all. Not everybody
sure.
wants a rose garden or whatever. But if what you are intending is a rose garden, then you need to make those steps, right? You need to
Mm,
take steps that are
mm,
going to encourage that. And having company sponsored ERGs is absolutely one way to do that, because not only are you, kind of to follow the gardening metaphor, not only are you staking out like a specific place where like we can have this happening and we can have this growing and we can create awareness of this, but you're also enabling those groups to then mesh together.
mm,
They're
mm.
not just existing by themselves on an island for those specific people and then nobody else is involved. It's like,
Right.
okay, well, sometimes they're going to need their own specific space, and this is, a good, kind of like you said, community building for that group. But yeah, then there are also multifunctions within there, right? Like awareness spreading, information gathering, celebrations of different cultures.
Mhm.
It's so important, right? Because like it's important that we share the heavy stuff, but also we share the light stuff as well. That
Yeah,
really kind of goes to highlight what makes having so many different facets within a company culture really great.
absolutely. And I think that having that and having I love the garden metaphor. That creates that space for, the if you have the wildflowers in the middle or wherever they might be to like see all of these different things that maybe they wouldn't otherwise, and then everybody is better for it. So I think
Oh
that's
yeah.
a beautiful metaphor and very apt.
Thank you. Thank you. I like
Yeah.
that one too. I'll have to hang on to that one to see,
Yeah.
have
For
it play
next
out
next
again.
session will be good.
Yeah, of course. Let's see. Okay. If you were talking to somebody who is looking to join Aurora Solar, what do you think is the best advice you can give them going into, like filling out an application or searching for roles themselves? What would you tell people who are, interested and want to start looking within Aurora Solar?
Yeah. It's such a good question. I think the biggest thing is just to be yourself. I think um as we've talked about, like we try to be very intentional about meeting people where they are and hiring a like diverse set of people. We don't I wouldn't say there's like, one way to portray yourself that is going to be, you know, Auroran like, other maybe being collaborative, but even then, like there's definitely time to where you've got to, put your head down and get stuff done. It's not always, teamwork all the time. But
Yeah.
have a general tendency. So I think just and I want to say something that's like not cookie cutter, not cliche, but really just I think being yourself, taking the time to look at the careers page and see finding the role that is right for you. And even if there isn't one at that point in time, we do have a general purpose like applications, a little bit generic, that is for future opportunities is what we call it, so that people can submit their information and be in the Aurora system. And then myself or my teammates, as we open up a new role, we'll look through those and see, okay, was there anybody with the skill set that applied previously, and kind of jumpstart things that way. And that's a little bit cliche perhaps, but I think it genuinely is that what comes to mind there.
No, no, it's not. I mean, first off, things get to be cliche because they were true for a
That's
while. So
true.
it doesn't
Yeah.
lend any illegitimacy to the argument. But yeah, I mean, like it really, I like this idea of really bringing who you are to work.
Mhm.
Um, I don't I don't think I'm alone in this, but as an elder millennial, it was very much not a thing I was encouraged to do, right?
Sure.
It was a like figure out where you can get a job, do whatever it takes to get your foot in the door. You
Mhm.
have to get your first entry level job and you pay your dues, and then that's how,
Yeah,
what you
then you
do,
can figure
right?
things out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not necessarily that that's not the case anymore, right? There's always going to be roles where, kind of you got to start from the bottom, work your way
You're
up.
gatekeeping. Yeah.
Exactly. But I think what we have been able to sort of kind of take out or lessen a little bit, especially now that we're getting to the age where millennials are starting to be management level, is that we're kind of taking out a lot of the like BS extra stuff, right? Like, I don't need you to get coffee for the entire office and be at your desk, 20 minutes before I get there and 25 hours after I
Right.
leave. Like, we're not doing that anymore,
Yeah.
right? We want there to be effort and intention, but like put it towards the stuff that matters, not
Yeah.
looking like this is what matters, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not the bureaucratic type, pay your dues and it's much more results first, right? And that
Yeah.
transcends who's doing it, right? It's all about, the
Yeah,
input.
we want to encourage people to learn the ropes, not like, well, you're going to be treated like crap and that's how it's going to go. So,
Yeah, not at all.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Okay, now obviously your focus within Aurora Solar is within the hiring sphere.
Mhm.
Are there any emerging trends or challenges in the industry in general that you are excited to see, or anything that y'all are planning long term for?
Oh yeah. I mean, great questions. I think, on the one hand, it's been a weird last 2 years market wise, right? And I think knock on wood, it seems like it's not just being on LinkedIn every day. It seems like it's not as doom and gloom as it has been, right?
Mhm.
And so, definitely, I feel fortunate to be in a position where we are still hiring and are still growing. Um, that being said, it's good to see that other companies are starting to do that again too. And so while it makes hiring a little bit, gives people more options, makes hiring a bit more competitive. That's, I think, overall a positive. And then I think secondly, we've been focused on, I think, as sort of a kind of a company, we initially grew very quickly, slow at first and then very quickly in the United States and Canada. Now we're starting to expand a little bit more and start to hire overseas in Europe and in Mexico and other parts of LATAM. So we're starting to explore new markets that, previously we would receive applicants that, people that were interested in us, but we didn't have the legal ability to hire them because of where they were located. And now that we're internationalizing, we're starting to be able to revisit some of those things in some of those areas, and we're just able to hire new types of people, and it's an exciting time to be working on that type of initiative.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, like we said, when DEIB hiring is so intentional, like, yeah, you need not only to expand your pool of applicants, but then where you get those applicants from,
Yeah.
really does open you up to new candidates, new abilities, all kinds of stuff like that.
Mhm. Yeah.
All right. One of the questions that we get a lot, obviously, we talked about pivoting, kind of both from within Aurora Solar, as well as if people are trying to pivot on their way in. If you've got somebody who is coming in from a different industry, is there have you seen anybody demonstrate the passion or commitment to the renewable energy sector despite not having any experience within that industry? And if so, what has that looked like?
Yeah. It's a good question. And I think I might take it a little bit different, if that's okay. So I think there have definitely been, as I said, most people that we've hired have not come from the renewable energy industry. And so through that, I would say there's definitely been a wide range of talking to people that are just interested in this and feel really drawn to the mission, but don't know much about it. That was certainly a big bucket I fell into. I thought solar was very different and much more straightforward than it actually was, or it actually is. And then there's the other side of that where it's like really passionate about this, have solar on my home or on my like camper or whatever, or just, really love this type of thing. And it's a passion or a hobby. But their professional experience isn't that. It's just a, personal thing that they've done. And I think, from that, there's any number of different things that those people might have done to gain that knowledge or do their own research. And I don't know that I could point to like a thing in particular, but because of sort of that and how we hire when people are onboarded into their teams, we do there's obviously like job specific and team specific onboarding, but we do company onboarding as well. And part of that is a 4-week solar school orientation where we actually solar school. It's basically kind of these like self-paced modules that are kind of take you through the history of solar, the science of solar, the history of the industry, and the application of it to kind of give, yeah, it's kind of to your point about like the window manufacturing earlier, to kind of give everybody that at least some sort of like solid foundation and commonality to like, even if I am in the finance team and I am looking through historical sales numbers in an Excel every day and really don't need to know anything about PV systems, now I do, right? And that, again, that's the bucket I fell in, and it was immensely eye-opening and humbling to see like, oh, okay, this is how, this is why like where you put the panels matters. It's not just a one size fits all for your roof. Who knew? So I think that's something we've crafted and built out over time and are continuing to improve, that kind of helps play catch up for anybody's like gaps in knowledge. So I think what I would say is, if you don't feel like you've got that knowledge or that footing on the renewable side, like don't worry about it. That's not something we're going to interview you, you know, on or hold against you in the interviews. We will make up for that on the back end on day one.
I like that. I think that's really good. I mean, especially recognizing that even if you come from outside the industry, you don't expect them to know everything.
Right.
Curiosity is good.
Yes.
But I think that's probably also very helpful, even if you do come from within the industry, because company to company, like the things can vary wildly, right?
Yeah.
Not every company has the same mission, not every company has the same like values.
Mhm.
So I think it is really helpful to kind of, like you said, like level set and say like, okay, this is the baseline knowledge we want everybody to have, so that way you understand how, big picture the puzzle pieces all fit together. I think that's really
Absolutely.
good.
Mhm.
All right, we only have a couple minutes left, so I want to make sure we get to some questions that are my favorite to ask,
Sure.
selfishly. The one of the questions I have for you is, you've been at Aurora Solar for a number of years now, both as a contract and now full time. Um, what is the reason that you stay at Aurora Solar? Like, what is there anything that you've found at this company that you're like, nope, I'm sticking. I'm not going to get this anyplace else. Like, this is why I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. This is something I get asked like on recruiter calls, fairly often, or, I think the question gets worded differently, but it's kind of still gets at the same thing. I think it's hard to narrow it down to one specific thing. What I'll say is I think it's going to be the mission and the people. And my thought there is that like there are a lot of really cool, we're in a great time where there are a lot of interesting technology companies doing a lot of cool things, and that can be in a mission environment, like maybe it's health tech or education tech, obviously green tech, I'm a little bit biased, but or it could be something a little bit more traditional in the tech space, and there's all these really exciting developments and things emerging and happening. So with that, like the type of people that want to join a green tech company and want to work on what many of us, myself included, consider to be like one of the biggest challenges of our lifetime, it takes a particular person and a particular mindset. And I think that those two things together create environment where for me, even on days that are challenging, or maybe like, have some difficulties, no job is smooth sailing all the time, right? There's always going to be bumps in the road.
The
It's
jobs that are is when you have to get worried. That's when you have to get nervous.
exactly, yeah, exactly. It's those, on those days, it's the fact that the mission is so fulfilling for me and the people embody that kind of grounds me and brings me back to like, this might have been a difficult day or a frustrating day, but it was worth it because of these things and these reasons. And I think that's, I'm, like as you pointed out earlier with like the millennial thing, we're maybe on the older side of like the, that part. And it feels fortunate to be in a place that I could have that. I'm able to feel that way genuinely at this age. I feel like a lot of people, go their whole lives without feeling that attachment to where they work. And,
Mhm.
you know, um, for better or for worse, right? I think you spend too much time at work to not enjoy to not be able to try to find some enjoyment out of it in the people. So I think those are, I kind of hijacked the question a little bit, but that
No,
hopefully that brought
no,
it
you
back.
got, yeah, absolutely. You got exactly where I was going with this. Yeah. Because I think it is important that, like you said, your job or your attitude towards work changes a lot when you find work that either is deeply meaningful to you personally, or that you think has meaning to others. Like,
Right.
like you said, like a lot of the work that we're doing in climate change now is not going to benefit anybody that is alive right, in this room at
Sure.
least.
Mhm.
A lot of what we're doing is for future generations, because we don't want them to inherit the task that we currently have. And so, I do think that it is, I never would have understood it until I went through it myself, right? I worked for all kinds of companies, some that were great, some that were a little bit less than great. And my attitude towards my job changed entirely when I found Power to
Yeah.
Fly, because this is a mission that really resonates with me,
Mhm.
both, personally as well as for future generations. I want pay equity in the workplace. I want workplaces that
Yeah.
reflect the lives we live. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I think that's really important to highlight, that once you find that, it can change a lot of the rest of work life for you. I think that's really
Absolutely.
important.
Mhm.
All right. In the last couple minutes we have left, I want to ask you, if people only take one thing from today's event, what do you want that one thing for them to be? What do you want them to remember once they leave here today?
Oh man, just one. I don't know. That's a good question. I guess that there is not and I feel like I've said this phrase several times today, but there isn't a one size fits all approach to hiring or to be hired by Aurora. I think we want people to be their authentic selves and their fullest selves, and that transcends the job description, right? I think it's all about obviously like the skills and sort of the functional stuff, like it has to be there, right? Goes without saying, but to not worry about trying to be an Auroran, and just being yourself, I think is one of the biggest things. And that when you are here, that we will support whatever that initiative, whatever that looks like for you, whether that's career progression or whatever the case may be. That they're yeah, well, yeah.
No, I think that's good. I like that. Aurora is a welcoming place. It's a place where, like you said, if you are able to bring your full self and be yourself in an interview session or setting, it makes it a lot easier to tell if you're
Yeah,
going to be a good fit there, right? Because I mean, they're not like, Aurora isn't just interviewing these people. These people are interviewing Aurora right back. Yeah.
absolutely.
So
Mhm.
I think it is really important that we highlight the importance of being yourself,
Mhm.
if only because, like, you want to be comfortable in that role. You don't want to feel like you have to go to work every day and kind of put on a
Yeah,
different
put on.
mask, or
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Like, kind of let certain parts of yourself go. We're all multifaceted people. We are our professional selves in the professional environment, but it's important to still be true to you.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I really appreciate that. This is excellent, excellent advice. I love this.
yeah. No, thank you for giving me the chance to.
Of course.
Yeah.
All right. That's going to be us wrapped for today's conversation. But I just want to remind y'all, if you are interested in Aurora Solar, please check them out on powertofly.com. They have a great company page. There's a lot that you can learn there. There's information about company culture, some benefit stuff. There's also a bunch of content there. So blog posts or videos, recordings like this, that I recommend that you check out, especially if you're interested in Aurora Solar. If you are applying and hoping for an interview, check out their company page on powertofly.com. There are a lot of great resources there that you can utilize, both to ask questions as well as, kind of find out some more about the company. And then don't forget, there's also the Follow Network. You can join that at the top of the company page. There's a big pink button that says follow. Just go ahead and tap that. And that will make sure that Aurora Solar is aware of you. It's a really great option if you are actively seeking roles, but don't see anything just this second that is great for you to apply to. And it also makes sure that we help out with your job search. We will let you know when Aurora Solar posts new roles, so that way you don't have to keep coming back and checking. So if you haven't checked out their page on powertofly.com yet, I very much recommend that you do. And I really hope that we have a lot of Aurora success stories or Power to Fly success stories to pull from today's event. So, Jacob, thank you so, so much for taking the time, sharing your expertise with us. It's been really wonderful to get to know you and learn more about Aurora Solar for the last hour. So, thank you so, so much.
Likewise, thank you, Meg. I greatly appreciate it.